Okay, so that last part was chapter 11. This is going to be chapter 12, where we focus more on marine biodiversity, right? And the loss of marine biodiversity. So the greatest threat marine biodiversity occurs in coral reefs, estuaries, and the deep ocean floor. And why? Right? So these are the answers to the why, right? So why in coral reefs and estuaries, right? So biodiversity is higher near the coast than the open ocean because of the greater variety of producers and habitats in coastal areas, right? So in coastal areas you have land nearby, right? And that land nearby is there to support plant life. And so if plant life can be supported, then obviously it's going to bring more organisms, right? If you think about our ecological pyramid, always coming back to this, right? If you have the producers, you can have the rest of the organisms that live there. They are the ones that support it. Finally, biodiversity is higher in the bottom regions of the ocean rather than the surface region because of the greater variety of habitats and food sources on the ocean bottom. So you would think, well, there's no light and there's no so how can there be producers there? So here we're talking more about bottom dwellers organisms, right? And so you have things like, clams and deep water fish. I'm not really sure the types, but I believe trout is the one that likes to be deeper rather than the others. And also things you have to realize is that when swimming things die on the top of the ocean, what do? They sink to the bottom, right? Where they have all this, and so the organisms down there now have this food to eat, right? What's called this detritus matter. Right? And so those organisms are called detritivores, like crabs and catfish, things like that. So the natural capital of marine ecosystems. So this is just to go through the important things, right? Again, whenever we see things like this is good FRQ information. So we go over economic services. So economic services are, money, things that bring in money or help save money in certain ways. And ecological, this is what they do for ecosystems, right? And so marine ecosystems help with climate moderation because they in this essence, because they absorb CO2, it helps with the climate moderation as far as global warming and things like that. So nutrient cycling, waste treatment, reduce storm impact. I don't have to go through all of these, right? So these are mangroves, barrier islands, coastal wetlands. These are things on the shore, right? And so these habitats on the shore help reduce storm impact, things from flooding or things like that. Habitats in nursery areas. So these areas tend to be high in nutrients, and so a lot of organisms will lay their eggs or have their babies in these nursery areas on the shore, and then when those babies grow up, they will come back out to wherever they live out to sea. Genetic resources and biodiversity. So this is in essence what they're talking about with the coral reefs, how that's the highest level of biodiversity or aquatic biodiversity areas. And then scientific information. So that, of course, we can always learn from what these places and spaces can give us. So as far as ecological, you know what? They have these things. I just realized these are split up. These are flip-flopped. This left-hand side are the ecological services. This right-hand side are the economic services. So they provide food, plant and animal feed, pharmaceuticals, things like that. So if we had to think about intrinsic versus instrumental, this right here would be our instrumental value. And the left-hand side would be our intrinsic value. Okay, and so next, freshwater. So here we're talking about marine water, which means, you know, sea or salt or ocean, right? So freshwater, some of the same essences. And so they have it right. These are the ecological, these are the economic. So again, on this side, this is our intrinsic. And on this side, our instrumental. Values. And so for some of the same things that we talked about in the previous slide, they're here. I don't need to go through them. And so again, remembering that this is good FRQ information. Next, so human impacts on aquatic biodiversity. So what are the some of the things that impact aquatic biodiversity? And so the H, 90% of fish living in the ocean spawn in coral reefs, mangrove swamps, areas under intense pressure from human activity. So this is where we live. This is where we want to be. I want to live on the coast and have water in my backyard, things like that. And so because of it, intense pressure from living, and you think about aquaculture, this is where aquaculture occurs. Right? In the wetlands right off the shore. Okay? Many invaders arrive in the ballast water stored in the tanks and large cargo ships. So look up ballast water, and in essence, it's the water that helps ships maintain balance. And so they'll let some water in to help balance the ship out, regardless of, depending on the weight of the ship or things that are happening. And it'll let some water out. And then when that happens, sometimes organisms like zebra mussels, that's how they got here, or other type of fish, things like that can come. 80% of the world's population lives along or near the coastal zone. Why? Because it's easy access to water, and water can be used for cooking, cleaning both your house and yourself. Water can also be used for transportation, right? We think traditionally, why do people live near the water? And it's just sort of stuck. The next P is pollution, right? 80% of the ocean pollution comes from land-based coastal activities. So you think you have these huge oil spills, and that's the big cause of pollution. But really, it's not. So this whole idea of the doubling the flow of nitrogen since 1860, right? So this is probably mostly as a result of fertilizer use. Massive input to sediment and other waste from land into lakes and to streams. And this is from deforestation and soil erosion, right? And recognizing that soil erosion can be caused from deforestation, but can also be caused from over-tilling, can be caused from waterlogging, from things like that. Next, modern industrialized fishing fleets can overfish most of the oceans and deplete marine life rapidly. Increased demand for seafood is outgrowing the sustainable yields of most fisheries. So this is our overuse. So here's a picture of what we're going to talk about on the next slide of the different types of ways that fish or seafood can be caught. And we'll go into the details of each one in the next slide. So I just want to bring your attention to this one here. Fish farming in a cage. So this is an example of aquaculture that we learned about last chapter. Aquaculture, and you can see it's right off the shore. It's my tank my cage that I've dropped in that's going to help me get to my fish more easily. So the first one, trawler fishing. Fish and shellfish that leave their shore drags a funnel shape, right? So, I have a typo. This shouldn't be trawl. I don't know why that H is there. This should be trawler fishing, right? And so you have a fish that you are dragging. I mean, a net that you're dragging to catch all the fish, all right? But these are the concerns that sometimes the turtles or the dolphins are unwanted fish, right? So we have this whole idea of what we talked about. So the dangers, right? So the bad part about this is that you could possibly have a lot of bycatch, stuff that you don't want there, right?